Hello everyone, I'm Moviefish. Today, let's revisit the 2011 classic film Source Code. It was a sensation upon its release and still shines brightly compared to other genre films 12 years later. Now let's dive into the story. The train is bound for Chicago. Our protagonist, Coulter, wakes up from a nap and finds himself in a strange environment. Everyone is busy and irritable except Tina, the girl opposite him, who shows genuine concern. Coulter has no idea who Tina is. In his mind, he is Coulter and he recalls memories of piloting a helicopter in Afghanistan. He wonders how he ended up on this train. Tina, on the other hand, thinks he is joking and insists that he is actually Mr. Shaw, not Coulter. As they chat, the train arrives at the station. Coulter gets off and takes a walk, feeling better. However, when he returns to the train and looks in the bathroom mirror, he is shocked. The reflection doesn't match his own impression of himself. Here's the twist. What we see is Coulter's self-perception. The mirror shows his true appearance as Mr. Shaw to others. Coulter is confused. Tina comforts him. Then a massive explosion kills everyone on the train. Coulter hasn't actually died. He's back in a consciousness pod with a screen for communicating with the outside. A female officer briefs him. He is Coulter and is on a national simulation mission. His only goal, investigate the train bombing and find the culprit. Coulter has many questions, but the officer ignores him and activates the pod. Coulter returns to the train and faces Tina again. The previous events repeat. This time, he has a mission, find the bomber. He decides to search the entire train for the bomb and, lo and behold, finds it in the ventilation duct of the bathroom. The triggering mechanism is a mobile phone. Now, the dilemma, how to disarm it. Will it explode prematurely if he messes up? After hesitation, he leaves it for now and focuses on finding the culprit. Pretending to be a train safety officer, he tries to check everyone's identity. But time runs out and the explosion strikes unexpectedly, taking all lives again. This time travel adventure is as brief as the previous one, lasting only 8 minutes. Coulter is back in the consciousness pod. Although death is simulated, the pain is very real. Fearful and infuriated, Coulter accuses the female officer of treating him like a puppet without disclosing any information. After her request to superiors, she agrees to disclose more information. This morning, a train to Chicago was bombed and everyone died. Coulter relieved the explosion through technology. Clues indicate it's the first of a series of bombings. To prevent future disasters, they need to catch the culprit early. Shaw Coulter has these repeated experiences. After calming down a bit, Coulter reports the bomb's location and triggering mechanism, but it's not precise enough. The female officer sends him back to the train, with only 8 minutes again. This time Coulter is more composed. Pretending to play a game with Tina, they analyze who the culprit might be. Though unsuccessful, their bond grows stronger. Coulter impulsively decides to rescue Tina. They disembark at the next station and search for suspicious individuals. But with a skeptical attitude, everyone appears suspicious. Coulter focuses on a bespectacled person, holding deep prejudice. As they start brawling, the train moves on and eventually explodes. Coulter realizes he accused the wrong person, but before he can rectify, he gets kicked onto the tracks, and another train arrives, leading to Coulter's demise. Coulter returns to the consciousness pod for the 3rd time, facing a new character, a scientist, the ultimate overseer of this experiment. Coulter reports that although he didn't find the culprit, he saved Tina. The scientist disagrees, explaining the source code and quantum physics. After death, the brain retains 8 minutes of memory. Coulter enters parallel realities, and time can be reversed. He didn't save Tina in reality. To prove it, the officer checks, revealing Tina's death in the real world. As the scientist explains, a new alert arises. The terrorist plans a massive attack on Chicago. No time to waste. The consciousness pod activates again. The officer reminds Coulter of a handgun in the train's safe. Use it if necessary. This marks Coulter's 4th return to the train, and it's the least successful. He forcefully opens the safe, gets electrocuted by security, and wakes up with only 8 seconds left. Tina is worried beside him, but nothing changes, and the explosion repeats. Coulter returns to the pod for the 5th time, now with a crucial revelation. he noticed the military badge on the officer's uniform. After this return to the train, he sketches the badge for further investigation. Tina inquires, and he fabricates a story about investigating a friend named Coulter in the military. Coulter discovers a passenger with a military hospital backpack, assuming she might recognize the badge. Indeed, the person identifies it as a military base, and Coulter urgently tries to contact the officer or the scientist for new leads. Tina interrupts, saying no need for a call. She found info on his friend. He died 2 months ago, and the funeral is done. Coulter, in shock, can't accept this, as his friend is himself. Tina recites more details matching Coulter's life, and he begins to panic as the source code starts to crumble. He was back in the pod. His immediate reaction was to question his reported death. The female officer, unable to hide it anymore, reluctantly revealed that Coulter had been in a helicopter crash 2 months ago. His body was torn apart. Essentially, he was dead in the usual sense. However, part of his brain function was still active, enabling him to engage in imaginative activities. At this moment, he believed he still had limbs and imagined himself in the consciousness chamber. In reality, Coulter was in a small box and couldn't communicate with the female officer by voice. A computer captured his thoughts and converted them into text, enabling the officer to understand his ideas. Coulter, grasping these truths, emotionally collapsed, venting his frustration and anger. The Dr. Rutledge, displaying a lack of sympathy, accused him of futile efforts, dismissing his attempt to call a military base from the train as pointless. He asserted that the train existed in a different world, and any call made from there wouldn't impact the real world. Although Dr. Rutledge's statements were accurate, they were harsh. Unexpectedly, he continued to escalate, using patriotism to manipulate Coulter into serious commitment, essentially holding his love for the country hostage. Coulter finally erupted, having already died once for his country, questioning the logic of having to continue serving after death. Dr. Rutledge reluctantly made a concession, promising him eternal rest once the mission was accomplished. The mission had stagnated for too long, and Dr. Rutledge was impatient, ordered the start of the 6th round. However, Coulter wasn't mentally prepared for the 6th and 7th rounds, both ending in failure with 0 gains. In the 8th round, he finally gathered his composure, unleashing his full potential. He went straight for the bomb, disarming the cell phone that received the signal. Luckily, the phone contained a call record, and the number on the other end was likely the culprit. Coulter dialed the suspicious passenger's number, and a conversation ensued. Judging by appearances, he seemed a bit twisted. Let's call him Tim. Tim was indeed on the train, but had left at the transfer station, tossing his wallet onto the train before departing. Just as Coulter picked up the wallet, the train started moving again. Regardless of his safety, Coulter jumped off the moving train, and Tina, concerned, managed to hold the train to save him. However, this took some time. By the time Tina had stopped the train, Coulter had already climbed to his feet. He spotted Tom messing with the van and pulled out his gun, explaining his deductions. He speculated that Tom was the culprit, getting on the train to set up the bomb and getting off to save himself. Tossing the wallet onto the train was his way of leaving behind identification to feign his death. This strategy allowed him to plan the next attack, and Tom was amazed that Coulter had figured it all out. Unfazed, Tom hopped into the van. It was the large-scale destructive device he had created. Coulter was about to extract more information when Tina arrived. Distracted for a moment, Coulter allowed Tom to carry out a double kill. Before leaving, Tom explained the motive behind his bombing plot, believing that the world would rise from the ruins. But first, it needed to become a ruin. In simpler terms, he had an antisocial personality. You might think that Coulter at least had disarmed the bomb, saving the train. However, the bomb had a second detonator in an inconspicuous location on the back. Tom made a call, and the train exploded again. Coulter found himself back in reality, though he died in the previous round. It wasn't crucial. What mattered was that he had remembered Tom's real name and the details of the vehicle. He reported all this, and Dr. Rutledge immediately requested the police to arrest him. Swiftly and decisively, the culprit was captured. Coulter's mission was successfully completed, saving thousands of citizens and proving the success of the source code program. Dr. Rutledge's team celebrated, and the female officer was relieved, primarily for Coulter. Even after Coulter's physiological death, his consciousness continued to fight. Now he could finally rest. However, Coulter had one more wish. He wanted to return to the source code to save everyone on the train, especially Tina. He knew the source code wasn't reality, and this rescue would only bring psychological satisfaction. The female officer hesitated for a moment, but eventually agreed. Coulter entered the source code for the 9th time. This time, he was adept and kinder to those around him, disarming the bomb with finesse. He apprehended Tom, having him confess through his phone and disposing of all his devices. In short, Tom wouldn't be causing any more world destruction. Then Coulter sent a lengthy message to the female officer. The core sentence was, "You will hear news of a failed explosion in an hour. This segment is crucial, and I will address it in the conclusion." Having completed the mission, Coulter finally had the time for love. In Tina's eyes, Coulter still embodied the image of Mr. Shaw. In fact, over the past few weeks, she had developed a liking for him, but he never pursued her. Coulter, on the other hand, was different. Having faced death multiple times, he cherished the last few minutes of his life. Consequently, he was brave, proactive, and willing to open up. When chatting with Tina, he noticed that everyone in the train compartment was quite negative. Spending the last few minutes of life in such a manner would be regrettable. Coulter offered all his cash to make him entertain the other passengers. The atmosphere became lively, and Tina couldn't believe how charismatic Mr. Shaw had become. Coulter kissed her, and they prepared to face the end of time together. In reality, the female officer was watching over Coulter's life support device. She intended to fulfill the promise and let Coulter rest after the 8 minutes. However, she never anticipated that Dr. Rutledge wouldn't let Coulter to die. Although he had previously promised to let Coulter rest, it was merely a deception. The truth was that the device was currently only compatible with Coulter. If he died, the machine would be useless. Therefore, he couldn't be allowed to rest. The female officer had never seen someone as shameless as Dr. Rutledge and, defying orders, pressed the shutdown key when the 8 minutes were up. The device shut down, and in reality, Coulter's heart had stopped beating, freezing the source code at the very last moment. Some viewers believe the movie reached its pinnacle at this point, while others think the real brilliance comes next. A miracle occurred. Coulter and the people around him were still alive. He himself hadn't expected to survive 8 minutes later. Life salvaged from death seemed exceptionally precious. He entered a new life in Chicago with Tina, experiencing indescribable happiness. Now comes the ending. The scene shifts to the female officer and the source code. Since the explosion incident didn't happen, the base was tranquil, everyone going about their routine tasks. After the female officer went to work, she received a text message from an unknown number, which happened to be from Coulter. The message was, "You will hear news of a failed explosion in an hour," and mentioned that they had together prevented the explosion. Shortly after, the news of the failed explosion was indeed confirmed. The female officer approached the life support device, where Coulter was slowly breathing inside. Her thoughts were tumultuous because the message also said, "Source code is more powerful than you think. What you thought created 8 minutes of the past actually created an entirely new world. I bet there's a Coulter waiting to carry out a mission beside you. Promise me you'll help him and tell him everything will be alright." What does this mean? The interpretation of this part has been diverse over the years. Let's discuss. I'll start. The first sentence is relatively straightforward. Source code is more powerful than you think. What you thought created 8 minutes of the past actually created an entirely new world. Dr. Rutledge emphasized multiple times that the source code's principle is to create countless parallel realities, which is indeed accurate. However, everyone assumed that these parallel realities could only exist in the past and could only be sustained for 8 minutes. Now, Coulter discovers that these parallel realities are actually entirely new parallel worlds. They don't just exist in the past, they continue into the future. Furthermore, in this source code, there is also the same source code program. Someday, this world will face a major event similar to the bombing, requiring this world culture to investigate. This will lead to countless parallel worlds, each extending into the future. Imagine countless parallel worlds, countless versions of yourself. How marvelous would that be in terms of space and time?